Hello, I'm Flic Taylor and you're listening to Everyday Burnout Conversations, the honest podcast that shares the burnout experience of others along with the stories of surviving and thriving in life. Today, I share a brilliant chat with the wonderful and wise Mandy Manners. And just so there are no surprises, this conversation discusses issues including depression, anxiety and sexual assault. Mandy Manners, she's an author, a speaker, a coach and a co-founder of Love Sober, a passionate community and podcast advocating for alcohol-free living to support mental health and well-being. Mandy specialises in mindset and recovery coaching, focusing on the impact that trauma and mental well-being have on problematic alcohol use. Now, this is a searingly honest conversation, and I was truly humbled by how open Mandy is in sharing her past experiences. I loved hearing and resonated with her experience as a young woman drinking in the 90s Ladette culture and how she navigated moving to France and then faced motherhood far from loved ones. She also talks about working hard to process past trauma and paying closer attention to meeting her own needs and self-care. Now, I hope you enjoy this chat as much as I did because it was reading Mandy and Kate's brilliant book, Love Yourself Sober, that inspired me to ditch drinking in the last 5 months. Now, I'm fully aware that I say this from a place of privilege because I was not addicted to alcohol, but I share this because my physical and mental health has benefited massively from not drinking. I think it's fair to say that the older I get, the less my body and mind like the after effects of booze. But this period of not drinking, well, it may last much longer than I'd once planned. So without further ado, enjoy this incredible chat with the lovely Mandy Manners. Mandy, I have been chomping at the bit to talk to you today. Thank you so much for being here and for sharing your wisdom.
Oh, my pleasure. It's been quite a long time coming. I'm sorry. It's like COVID got in the way and then Christmas got in. You
know what, though? I don't know. Like when you cancelled, it was kind of a blessing because you know how you just keep going and then you kind of feel like, says the woman who's in burnout recovery, or I'm a bit tired. Instead of going, I'm tired, I should take a break. I'm like, I'm tired, I should now interview 3 people who I love and adore. It just, talk about...
That's one of the tools, isn't it? It's the ability to go, actually say no. I mean, I'm quite lucky. Kate and I we keep each other accountable. So like for me, she sent me an email this morning saying, I haven't slept, like I've got this to do. And I was like, why don't you cancel that, remove that and do that? She's like, okay. And often she'll say the same to me. She's like, Mandy, yeah, that's too much. I can say no.
Yeah, you need someone to come in with that fresh perspective. I was talking to Dr. Mina Viss and her husband does the same. He'll say, instead of doing more, what else can you take off the to-do list?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Take the off is always a good starting point because otherwise you get sort of so discouraged by your lack of, sort of ability to move on as well. So it's sort of, it's helpful to be able to do little and often rather than, too much. Says 2 women in recovery from burnout.
2 women in recovery and
from all the things.
Oh dear. Now I've recently read your amazing book that you co-authored with Kate Bailey. I mean, the flags and the highlighter pen are a true testament of how much I loved this book, but how bloody useful it is. It's incredible. It really is. And so, to start off with, can you share a little bit about your experiences with burnout and how they led you to doing the work you do now?
Well, thank you for that, about the book, because it's really nice to hear. It's one of those things that you kind of put out in the world and you don't, obviously you get a bit of, it's just really nice that someone's read it and has enjoyed it and it's been helpful because, it takes a lot of energy to write a book. So I just really appreciate it. It's like, wow, yay, look at all those little highlighters and things. Like, that's just, we're always a fan of stationery, so
I think that's when I realised how much I loved you, when I saw your post on Instagram about stationery, and I thought, looking at my desk, I think there's a
any way to get cheap dopamine hits that don't involve drugs and alcohol. So burnout. So I moved to France 16 years ago. So I grew up in the UK. I went to university in Brighton, then went to London, and I was working in theatre in London, got made redundant, met my now husband, moved back to Brighton. We were living there, kind of living quite a hedonistic Brighton life in our kind of 20s. And we decided to move to France. It was really me that wanted to move. And I think one of my things has been, is like, if I don't like something and things aren't going well, then I'll get up and move. Like, I've moved a lot in my life. And so we were living in France, and when we arrived, I realised that I was pregnant with my daughter. So we'd had this moment. It's like, shall we go to France, or shall we stay in Brighton and up a bit and have a baby? And then it kind of collided. So I was in France, didn't speak French, and pregnant with my daughter. So I had my daughter and then my son kind of 19 months apart. So they're quite close in age. And then I went back to work. So like, I didn't fit the expectations and the feelings around being a stay-at-home mum. I struggled with it. Like, it wasn't all that I hoped. I found it really difficult. I found it really, I wish I'd enjoyed it more now, because my kids are grown up, but that's just the way it is, right? But it wasn't fulfilling to me. And so I got a job working at a French university as an English language teacher. And all of a sudden I was back in with young people, they really liked me. I was getting that kind of, social aspect of my life back, and my life just kind of split in half. So I was like trying to be the best mum, didn't really feel like I was doing the best job there, really, really worried. And I had quite a lot of trauma that kind of came up when I had my daughter, but none of that was diagnosed at that time. I was just like kept going. And then working, pretty much full time. And, it's tiring being a teacher. You're in front of people all the time, you're performing essentially, and especially in the roles that we were, which was very much, it's kind of like coaching, because French kids are really not very confident when it comes to speaking English, so it's very high level, elitist school, very, very intelligent kids, but couldn't and wouldn't speak. So there was a lot of like plays and debating, and I loved it. And they loved me. So it was this great little, ego thing going on. And I loved it until it got too much, really. And so I was working. At one point I realised that in a year I hadn't actually. What happened was I tried to come home early to pick the kids up from school, and they weren't there. And I didn't know that actually they came out of school at the other gate, because I hadn't managed to get to school on time any time that year. And it was like, hang on a second, this isn't what I wanted. My kids were being dropped off at 7 a.m, or 6:30. And then I was picking them up at 7 p.m, and then, going home, doing dinner, putting them to bed. Throughout all that kind of period, I'd always been a heavy drinker, always been a party girl, like very much identified in that kind of 90s Ladette kind of lifestyle, growing up in England, sort of recreational drugs and going to clubs and raves and festivals and all those things. So I had a real identity crisis going on, so I knew that didn't fit the value set that I wanted as a mum. Yet I didn't feel fulfilled, and I didn't know how to be the mum that I wanted to be, because I was heavily traumatized and probably had, postnatal depression as well, sort of looking back. And and then this kind of lifestyle of kind of teaching in a university, going out with the students after, for drinks, kind of hanging out with a single, different kind of members of staff. And, obviously living abroad was pretty lonely. So I just had, a couple of mates that were British as well that I found. And it was just this sort of, it was really fun. So it was just like I slipped back into who I was before kids. So I lost myself completely, to the point where I would go to the bar, after work just to stay for one, hadn't eaten or anything. And then, living in the north of France, beer's really strong as well. So we'd stay and have, 3-4 beers. And then I'd be like running to get the kids, from crash, picking them up, starting to feel a little bit, hungover, sort of coming down from those couple of beers. Of course, on a diet, as most women are all the time. So trying not to eat carbs, trying not to eat, basically. So I wouldn't eat with the kids. I'd like keep going, have a couple of glasses of wine to keep going through that difficult transition period, and then kind of get them in bed. Read their stories. And then go downstairs and, have another glass of wine, maybe have some chocolate, and feel like I'd had a nice treat, this bizarre kind of way that alcohol is sort of, perceived to be a treat for many, many women. My husband was working away a lot. And so it got to the point where I wasn't sleeping. I was in that kind of sort of cycle that I would make rules around my drinking, like, okay, I'm not going to drink on, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Well, Thursday is nearly the weekend. So Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Well, Sunday is quite nice to have a couple of drinks just to sort of settle. And then, probably drinking on a Tuesday, but only a couple, and just constantly in my head, should I, shouldn't I? Trying to keep tabs on it. How many glasses did they have? Matching my drinks to other people, all of those things that sort of classify that kind of hazardous, harmful drinking. And getting more and more depressed because I was getting, I wasn't showing up in the way that I wanted to. My life was chaotic. It was, I kind of, to the point where I don't know if you resonate. I know a couple of people that I've talked to about burnout resonate. I couldn't understand time. So like I would try and work out, right, I've got to get the kids out at this time and then we'll be at school on time, and everything just would never work out. Like I just couldn't work out. And I still, when I get really stressed, I still need help around that. Like I get really confused about, the amount of things I have to do, or like I have to sit with my husband and go through the list, because I think it's when my brain goes into kind of freeze mode and it's just like I literally don't know what's going on. And so it ended up that I'd had quite a crazy summer because I had my kids young. So I had my daughter when I was 26, my son when I was 28. So, still 30, birthdays, weddings. So we had a summer of like 3 weddings, lots of going back to England, lots of kind of partying and then coming back and being mum, really disconnected, and not sleeping. And it ended up that sort of, I was pretty suicidal. I didn't like anything about myself. Like nothing made sense to me anymore and nothing felt good. And I kind of identified that maybe, I should stop drinking. So I was kind of trying and then, not getting very far and sort of deciding to just, that was okay. Like, I only live once. And then it kind of got really bad. And I decided to stop everything. I kind of had what I know now is that I went into withdrawal, but I had basically like a really bad panic attack. So I told my husband, it's quite a unique situation because I didn't speak French very well at the time. So I kind of wrote down everything that I was feeling, you know, like I feel like a terrible mom, I feel like a terrible person, I don't know why I exist, you know, all the, you know, the darkness that was in my head, and had to give it to my husband and then him translate it and read it to the doctor. And luckily, like by the grace of whatever, my doctor was also an addiction counsellor and also a CBT therapist. And also a paediatrician. And so I started going, he was like, look, come and see me, you know, come and see me. So at the beginning, I was signed off work for a bit. I was seeing him twice a week, doing CBT sort of therapy, never really looking at my drinking. It was around kind of, my relationship with myself, my identity. I'd grown up in quite a socialist household, and I was working in a, you know, private elitist business school. So I was carrying all these really complicated feelings about my place in the world and success and money. And like, there was a lot to sort of, deal with, and huge kind of trauma that sort of I went through when I was 18. So that was the sort of starting point. And I stayed working with him. He put me on antidepressants. And I think it was probably about kind of 4 or 5 months into working with him that I was like, I think drinking doesn't help. You know, I think alcohol is making me more depressed. And he, being French, was like, well, you know, we'll have a little bit, but, you know, and I was like, okay. So I sort of tried that, but it wasn't working. And then at Christmas, I just was so hungover, like Christmas Day, Boxing Day. I remember really, like, you know, my parents were over and everyone had stopped drinking in the afternoon, and I just couldn't understand why. I was like, why have you stopped? Like, come on, like what? Like everything was revolving around having more drinks in my life. And so in the middle of the night, I Googled, you know, am I an alcoholic? Do I have a problem with drinking? And found Soberistas, which is an online forum which is mostly women, really, anonymous. And I just sort of said, oh, you know, I think I've got a problematic relationship with alcohol. And, you know, got about 20 messages back of people saying, don't worry, you know, you're all right, me too, it's fine, just keep blogging, just keep connected, you know, and all these stories around kind of very similar stories to me. It's like, you know, I used to be a Ladette and, you know, binge drinking, and I've never known how to stop that. Like, I don't seem to have an off switch. Like I don't seem to be able to moderate, or if I am moderating, it's just incredibly hard work. And, you know, and it wasn't about like, you've got a disease or you're an addict or you're an alcoholic. It was just like, I've got this really intense relationship, toxic relationship with alcohol. And that made sense to me. It was like, okay, yeah, I can see that. I can see that in other relationships. I had toxic boyfriends in the past, you know what I mean? So I could be like, yeah, okay. Oh yeah, it keeps telling me it's going to be different this time. And it always ends up in the same place. So that was kind of, that was the first burnout. So I kind of, from that, I, you know, eventually about sort of, it was difficult to stop. I would do about 2-3 months, and then I'd be like, someone would say, it'd just be like one thing, like, oh, I think I can, you know, moderate and have a glass of champagne or only drink, you know, beer or something. And I'd be like, oh yeah, cool. Okay. Me too. And so I kind of get dragged back into it for a bit. And then I quit, and I did a year. And that year, like, loads changed. We moved, like, I quit my job. We moved to the seaside. You know, my mental health was so much better. I ran a half marathon. Like, everything was just like, yoo-hoo, you know, so much so that I weaned myself off my antidepressants and was like, I'm fine, I'm cured. And then I had another breakdown. So So I think, moving, not work. So it's so extreme. I'd gone from like working full time all the time to not working at all. And it just doesn't suit me. Like I need to be active, but at a moderate pace. And I started drinking again because we moved here and I didn't know people. And I was like, how can I make friends if I'm a sober person? And then I went back and forth for about 2.5 years. From that point, after that year, I kind of knew like William Porter, who wrote Alcohol Explained, he always says, like, once it's soured, it's soured. And it's so true. It's like when you know. And it like I would never be a carefree, easy drinker again. It just didn't work because I was too consciously aware of how I felt when I was sober, but also, the guilt, the shame, the worry, I just like, I could manage it. I was, I wouldn't drink in the week. Like I'd only drink with my husband. And then it was more about occasional binges where it would I'd black out. But it was such an effort the whole time. It's just like constantly kind of like thinking about it. And, I didn't want to just have one. I just didn't, So
never do at the time. It's delicious.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, I guess we'll talk more of it in terms of, alcohol and the work that I do now. I mean, I think we're sold very unclear information about alcohol. It's a depressant, it's a stimulant, so if you have anxiety or depression, it works to suppress your own ability to build neurochemicals in your brain. So on those levels, it's making things worse. We're not told that's not a message we get told. And it's addictive, and I think I just didn't know. I just didn't believe it, and I didn't want to believe it. And I just had no concept of, addiction, because the only way that I knew addiction was that rock bottom, someone on a park bench. And I knew it wasn't that. So obviously I didn't have a problem, but addiction is, it's a gradient scale. It's complicated. It gets worse and progressive over time. So you can be a bit addicted, and I mean, I train people now as a coach in addictive behaviours, and, and that's all around the circuitry of the brain. It's like we can get addicted to many, all things. It's just our biology, and some things are more addictive than others. Cocaine is more addictive than alcohol. Nicotine's more addictive, but alcohol's more addictive than your phone. But they're both addictive, right? So it's just all about, so it's complicated. I did have another burnout last year, so I'm not quite, I'm not totally kind of sorted in this area, because I think I have a tendency to people please, and I have a tendency to I'm still in recovery from trauma. I'm still trying to work out how to, manage my nervous system. I still have a tendency to, work too much or fill the hole, essentially, whatever it is. But I'm hopeful, she says, touch wood, I'm getting much better at seeing the red flags of when I'm getting overwhelmed. It's like a fizz in the system. I don't know if you can relate to that. It's kind of like I get a feeling of like, and it's your nervous system being deregulated. You're going into fight, flight, or you're going into freeze. And I can sense it now. Like I've done quite a lot of body work to be like, oh, okay, I feel that. So that was a really long answer.
Well, I'm just going to let my naughty cat out. You know what's fascinating? Go on, you cheeky chop. He's already in my bad books because he ate my Jamie Oliver fish cakes last night. I'm listening to your story, Mandy, and I'm just... Honestly, there was a point I was like, oh my God, I'm going to cry just because it resonates so much, and people listening. God, as women, we're tough on ourselves, aren't we?
Yeah.
Because on paper, you've been through a lot. And I know it's a lot to move to another country. And I know that feeling of just the amount of effort and energy it takes to make it work. And I certainly did that. And we're just not, we're not easy on ourselves, are we? Like, you know, you would have had your kids young, and when my kids were young, I was working with other people's children. So I would spend all day working with kids, which takes so much of your energy. And then coming home to your own and wanting to be the very best. I so know that feeling of just giving and giving and giving. And I don't know about you, but I had no lens to it. I had no idea how depleted I was. Yeah. And in a way, the more depleted you become, the harder you are on yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. And the harder, you know, the more of your kind of, you know, frontal, you know, lobe of your brain where you make good decisions is offline. Like, you know, the heart, that the more dysregulated you are. And I remember talking to my dad. And so when it all kind of got really, really bad, you know, I searched online with my husband before I went to the doctor to find a therapist, an English-speaking therapist. And I just went to this person one time and I just sat there and I like cried for, you know, an hour. And then she was like, I want you to find 2 hours for yourself a week. And I was just like, fuck you. Like, I can't take, what are you talking about? Like, it was inconceivable to me that I could find 2 hours for myself. I was just like, what? That's just like, if I found it insulting, I was like, who do you think you know? I mean, okay, I was sat like, you know, 2 hours every night drinking a bottle of wine, you know, so there was time there. But, you know, the idea of taking time for myself, you know, she's like, go for a run or go for a walk or whatever. It's just like, who do you think you are? Like, I've got no support. I've got, you know, and I just went into anger. It's just like, rah, rah, rah. Because for me, like, I had such a strong narrative that if I took time for myself, that was selfish, that, you know, and I remember talking to my dad and I was in such a state and I'd hidden a lot from my parents.
Yeah.
I you know, was sexually assaulted and raped when I was 18, when I was traveling in Mexico. I never told anyone. I didn't tell anyone for like, you know, over 15 years, apart from my friend who was there at the time, who I swore to secrecy. And yeah, so my parents had no idea like what was going on. Like, they knew that I was quite a kind of rebellious kid, but I just went off, you know, I went way off the rails and they had no idea really. And then I was living in another country and I, you know, and I had a lot of rage, you know, with the kids when they were younger. You know, it was not, you know, I wasn't showing up how I wanted to. And I was just like, I remember saying to Dad, I was just like, I just don't, you know, I don't know what to do, you know, and I like, but I have to work because I have to show them that, you know, as a modern woman, you know, I work and I've got a career and, you know, and I have to show them that, you know, I like, you know, I'm a good mum and I have to make good food, you know, and I was just like, and I was like, but and he was like, but Mandy, someone has to pick them up from school.
Yeah. And
I was like, he was like, you know, someone has to be there. So why can't that be you? And I was like there was no legitimacy around being a mum, you know, and taking that time for them. And I was like, oh. And that was kind of the catalyst of me quitting my job and trying to be a stay-at-home mum for a while, which wasn't the right solution either. But yeah, I think women, certainly as a sort of a feminist, you know, I was like, I've been given, you know, a sort of an inkling of a space at the table. Like, I can't possibly say now that it's hard, you know. So it's like, just keep going, just keep going, just keep going, you know, have a career, you know, be a good mom, do it all. Yeah, you know, and voila, burnout, which I think is, you know, the story for a lot of people.
It's so hard, isn't it? Because I think also our generation, our mums, they didn't do bloody World Book Day. They didn't do all of these crazy things that we are trying to do. So if our mums were working, well, then they were working. They weren't trying to do everything. And I think our generation is so interesting, isn't it, Mandy? I mean, even when you were talking about the Ladette culture in the 90s, I really remember that. Oh my gosh. And so, here
I was so proud. I was proud to drink like the lads, and it was like at that, it was like, and now, it was only when I moved to France and, like obviously sort of French women have a different relate. Doesn't mean there's not huge problems with alcohol. But they have a different relationship with alcohol, and French women don't get drunk. French women don't drink pints. And I thought it was really cool. And actually French men were like, that's quite cool and novel because she's British. But I'd never seen that sort of mirrored back that was, and so we did, it was a feminist thing, which was like, well, I don't get, I'll drink pints with the lads and do all of those things where actually what's crazy is when we were writing the book, we found this study that there was no sort of examination of the impact of alcohol on women's body until the 1990s. Because we have hormones, we're deemed as, unstable subjects to test. So all testing around alcohol was on men. And so we actually don't have, this enzyme in the blood which breaks down alcohol. We don't have it. Men have it. We don't have it. We have a lot more, fat in our system. They have a lot more water. So actually, like, I hate to say it as a feminist, but we don't process alcohol the same way as men. So we should, even if you're drinking moderately, and again, we're sold, I would go to the pub and I'd have a large glass of wine and my husband would have a pint. And the alcohol content is hugely different. Like wine was 12.5% and he's having a 5.7 whatever beer. So in so many different ways, like women are being put at high risk, and some people might not have sort of shock dramatic trauma like me. There are a lot. We saw it with the Me Too movement. But a lot of women have been through trauma, be it birth trauma, be it, adverse childhood experiences, be it, bullying, be it fat shaming. Yeah. All of the things, and not just women, if your race, your sexuality, all of these things, they have an impact on your nervous system. They have an impact on how you feel that you connect to the world and how grounded you are. And if your nervous system is dysregulated because of that, you have a much higher rate and likelihood to develop an addiction to an addictive substance. So it's like, and that's what's so frustrating, so upsetting about kind of, mummy wine culture and how it's pushed on women, because actually mums are incredibly vulnerable to alcohol addiction. They are exhausted, they are, traumatized, they are having depression, there's massive transitions in their hormones, in all of the things, and we're being hugely targeted to develop a dependency on an addictive substance.
Yeah, it's so true.
And what I mean, going back to what you were saying about our kind of lives through the lens, of having to do all the things and be a good mum. Like, I think what happens, sort of, because I was part of it too, when there was that kind of Insta mum kind of explosion, that honest parenting movement, like it was born out of us saying enough, enough of us having to do World Book Day, having to do all the things, having to show up like we still look like a mother, supermodel, and get our kids ready and have a career. Like, we can do all these things, but it's hard work and that needs recognition. And that was brilliant, and it was bonding, and part of that was drinking.
Yeah.
So it came out of a place which was quite innocent. It was just like, that was a hard day, kids in the bath, I'm having a gin and tonic, ha ha ha, I've got a night out, I'm going to have fun with my mates and get a bit pissed, which was all very innocent. But there's a lot of women that don't just have one gin and tonic, but they connect and they bond with that world because it feels like they belong. And I certainly did. I was like, oh, cool, look at them. And me and my friends across the world would be like, chinking a glass of red wine to each other or reading the blogs and being like, ha, 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 because it made us feel okay.
Yes.
So there's no shame, no blame in any of this. Like, it's, it is okay for some people, but it's really not okay for some other people, and
yeah.
A message, I guess, about our book, about the work we do. It's just like that we get it. We get all these messages and we get how complicated it is, and there's no shame. But within you, I knew that it was a problem. I knew that I was drinking too much, and I knew that it wasn't serving me and it wasn't making me happy. And that's the best question, right? It's just like, are you happy?
Yeah.
That's the only sort of thing that you need. It's like, that's it. You don't need to be an alcoholic. You don't need to have any labels. It's like, is drinking making you happy? Is it taking away more than it's giving you? All right, that's the permission to stop.
Yes. I was talking to Becky Pell recently. She's a yoga instructor, and she was saying, it's looking at, is this nourishing me or numbing me? And it just nails it, doesn't it, Mandy? Because I'm just thinking, talking about mums. I can remember, so this would have been like 10 years ago when my kids were younger. So I'm just thinking, I would work all day with kids, come home, sort my own kids out, dinner, everything, wash up, and then to look after myself, again, pressure, I would then go on my elliptical trainer. But because I missed England so much, I would then watch a British show. So I'd watch some, and it doesn't matter whether it's like a comedy, a crime show, whatever, there's always a scene where they're in a pub. And so I would do my elliptical trainer, and then afterwards I'd be like, oh my God, I need that part of my old life again. So I would then go and have a bloody glass of wine or a beer, because I would think again, I've got to try and help myself, but without the lens of just go to bed. You're already doing too much. But it's really interesting, isn't it? Like, we don't ever take a step back and want to nourish ourselves. We're just punishing ourselves and we numb ourselves. And so many women are doing this. Yeah. And I just love your message in your book where, alcohol, it's not just a financial cost, it's a cost on your health. And when I read that hit the spot for me, because I stopped drinking purely from a financial aspect. I thought, I'm on burnout, I'm not working, I'm not earning, like, it's okay to take this time and try and recover. I've got no other bloody choice, but I cannot justify going out and buying a bottle of wine. So I stopped. And then the difference was, like, people were telling me I was starting to look good and whatever. I had not even clued into the fact that stopping it would have a beneficial effect on my health. It's fascinating, isn't it?
Yeah. And again, it's like, well, when you look at the messaging we're given, in the media, no wonder. Do you know what I mean? Because, I remember in one of the periods when after I'd done a year and I'd gone back to drinking, and I was like, sort of, sober curious as it were, to be like, you know what, I'm not sure about this. Like, it definitely wasn't the problem that it was before, but it didn't feel great. And I was watching The Good Wife. I loved it, amazing series. And she would drink these massive glasses of red wine and have no effect, like, ever. She'd never be hungover. She'd still be the, the boss lawyer and do all the things. And I was like, that's not really kind of right. And then you start to sort of, you look out into kind of advertising around Christmas, and, the messages are like, you can't have fun without me. You can't bond without me. You can't celebrate without me. Everything about your life is improved with me in it. And so when you start questioning, going, really? Because hangovers really suck, For me, I mean, that's been my, we talk about gratitude and all those things, all the practices that you can build in so it doesn't feel like you're missing out. It's like, what do I gain from taking alcohol out of my life? And the first and foremost, still the best is no hangovers. It's still the best. It's just like, I don't know however many, 1,700 a day, however many days it is now, but that's a lot not to ever feel that bad. Like it is the worst feeling in the world. You feel like you're poisoned because alcohol is a poison. So that's like the physical manifestation of what alcohol is doing to your system. But again, you have yoga and wine time. You have, it's infiltrated the wellness world. You have zero seltzers, which is basically straight vodka. Yeah. It's vodka water, but we're sold it as a, fat-free drink. So it's really hard to until you step out of it, realize that actually this thing, does have a negative impact, is bad for you. One of the ways, and it's in the book talking about the elephant and the rider, which was really helpful to me, is the fact that our brain is sort of complex. We have logical thoughts, which is the forefrontal cortex, which is where we decide things. Then we have the limbic system, which is the emotional part of the brain. And then we have the kind of primitive part of the brain, which is, essentially like, I need to eat, I need to have sex, and I need to survive. So that's where we go when we're in trauma state and in burnout. But the thing that drives our behavior, the thing that really kind of will make the decision for us is the emotional part of the brain. Is the memory side, is the learned behavior, the learned feelings. So we can know something, this was proven with cigarettes, right? Yeah. So they put these notices on it. No one cares. They keep smoking because it's cool to smoke, because there's an emotional relationship with it. And it's the same with drink. A lot of us know, like, alcohol causes cancer, alcohol can be addictive. We kind of know all these things. But the emotional relationship we have that it makes us sophisticated, or it's a treat, or, it's something we do with our friends, or it's rebellious, or all of those things, that's what drives our behavior. Yeah. That's what we need to change, so you have to be like, okay, actually, how do I want to show up in the world? Who do I want to be? Is the way that I drink aligned with my values or not, And because that was really hard for me, because I was a hedonist, I was a rave girl, I was anti-establishment and all the things. And so then I'm going to be sober, it's like, really pretty boring, And so I had to really work at it and just like, actually, this is probably the most rebellious thing I can ever do. Because I'm not doing what everyone else is doing. I'm saying fuck you to advertising. I'm actually choosing my health over just fitting in with people. And then I got it on board. I was like, okay, yeah. And then I'm going to get tattoo. Then I'm going to be like all the things that are like, I'm going to own it in a way that is empowering, not like, oh, I've got a problem with alcohol. It's just like, yeah, man, I'm over that stuff. Like, enough. No, it's not for me. Like, that's not for you. Why would you? But it took a lot of work. It's not easy. It's easy.
It isn't bloody easy. And I'm just thinking, like, isn't it funny? It's, it takes a lot of courage to, instead of numbing and putting your blinders on to what you don't like in your life, what you need to, what you want to try and overcome. It takes a lot of work to do that, as opposed to going and then pouring a glass of wine and just getting to, and almost living by that culture, living by that. I don't know about you, but I noticed when I moved to Canada, it was really odd not seeing pubs on street corners, like coffee shops. And at first I was like, oh God, bloody North American, a bloody shops, like whatever. But you know, it just goes to show what you're brought up with, what you see, what is modelled. And you know what's interesting, Mandy, you were saying, like, when you were chatting to your dad and you were like, I want to show my kids that I have a career and I want to show my kids, you know, we want to show our kids all these things, but it never dawns on us that we should also show our kids self-care and what it is to love yourself. It's so funny, isn't it? Because, you know, by you and your journey and what you're doing and what I'm doing, our kids are growing up seeing a role model of, hey, I'm going to put myself first here. I'm not going to take my health for granted. I'm not going to, you know, push myself to the limits. I'm actually going to live this lovely, healthy, joyous, sustainable.
I know. It's annoying now. My kids are like, I can't possibly, I'm a bit tired. I need to lie down. You know? That's what I get now. Oh no, mummy, I couldn't. It's been very, very stressful at school, so I just need to like lie and watch the TV for a while. You know, which is, I prefer that. But you're so right, and I had that about booze as well. Like I had this real thing that I had to drink and learn to drink, occasionally, moderately, to show my kids that as an example.
Right.
That was another thing. It's like, no, I can't not drink. Like I have to drink, but I have to be able to drink, you know, just one glass because I need to model that for my kids. And now, you know, when my alcohol blinkers are off, it's like, what? You know, how cool is it that they have a parent that doesn't drink? And then, you know, my husband drinks. We have a wine cellar in our house. You know, he's very into fine wine. We live in France. You know, it's part of our family culture, but they have a choice, which is just astounding. It's like, mummy doesn't drink, papa drinks. I'll see how I feel about it, you know. And we talk about, you know, my son's pretty anxious, you know, he's neurodiverse, you know, so for him it's higher risk. So, you know, we talk about that. It's just, well, maybe it might not be the right thing for you. You know, so see how it goes, you know, if you want to try it at some point, not when you try it, but if you want to try it at some point, just be aware that because, you know, you're dyspraxic and your brain gets confused about things sometimes, it might not be the right fit for you. So he's like, he's entering it with caution.
Oh,
you know, like,
amazing, which is very different to what we grew up with. Do you know what I mean? Like I can remember when I was little, we would go to pub gardens at night, and it was a playground, wasn't it?
And that didn't even occur to, like, being here in France. It was my daughter that pointed it out to me. We went back to England, went to London, and my friend had their daughter's, I think it was her 4-year-old daughter's birthday party in a pub.
Yeah.
And my daughter said to me, she was like, it's a funny thing to have a children's birthday party in a bar. And I was like, oh, yeah. Like, I just never even thought about it.
Exactly.
And, you know, and I love pubs and I love pub culture. So, and we work quite a lot with Club Soda in the UK, who, you know, are the kind of mindful drinking movement. And their whole message is around making, you know, pubs safe and enjoyable places for everyone. So very much about, you know, getting good alcohol-free drinks in pubs, you know, because again, it's not just people that have had problems with, you know, addiction or problematic alcohol. There's many reasons why people don't drink. You know, it might be for anxiety, or it might be for religion, or they might be pregnant, or they might just not like it. You know, so make those places, because they are community and they're really important places for community, but they have to be places that are okay for everyone to go to and not unsafe. Because, you know, I do sometimes, because I'm anxious, and that's part of the reason why I drank, you know, social anxiety, I definitely go in the pub and be like, oh, you know, it's very overwhelming, you know, sound triggers, light triggers, like noise triggers, down of drinks, and then feel a bit better. So I do struggle to go to some pubs because it's people are too pissed. It's too much.
Yes. Yeah.
So yeah, it's not about kind of, I'm not anti-alcohol, but I just want to have an informed choice. And that's what people don't have at the moment. Some labels might have, don't drink if you're pregnant, but they should have, alcohol is impactful for your mental health. There should be some sort of labeling around the fact that, just clearer labeling and not, the labeling is, drink responsibly. It's like, well, alcohol makes you out of your own brain and body. So as soon as you've had one, you can't really be responsible. And it's all about the person. It takes it all on the person and not on the drink.
Yes.
France, for example, it's the abuse of alcohol is dangerous for your health.
Oh, nice.
So at least it's, it's more representative, right?
Yeah, get in there. Yeah, absolutely. I can remember going to my doctor. So it was almost like a very steady, I'm now realising my burnout has been brewing for bloody probably 5-10 years, let's face it. And I think a lot of women are, they're brewing it, aren't they? But I can remember on my real decline when things were just crazy and I was working all hours and pushing myself and not feeling a good enough mum and all these things. I was going to my doctor and she was brilliant, Mandy. She was fabulous because, I can remember saying to her, she was like, okay, I love that you're doing all this writing and you're helping other people out there, but as your health practitioner, what are you doing for your health? And I'm like, oh, honestly, I've got it. I'm fine. I'm, doing all the right things. I'm going for a walk at lunch. And honestly, I shut off now at 6 o'clock. Total bloody lie. I shut off now at 6 o'clock and I just have a couple of glasses of wine and it sets me up. And she said, well, I don't know how much that wine would be helping you. And I can remember almost falling off my chair. I was like, what? Because you get so indoctrinated in that culture of it just becomes second nature. Pour a glass of wine, it calms everything down. It almost differentiates between the stressful working day and then taking over and being you. I thought, bloody hell. So
yeah, and that's rare. That's rare. We have a lot of women in our community who, went to the therapist, and were told just to have a couple of glasses of wine, or when the doctor said, well, do you have the count your units and make sure you don't drink too much. And it's like, well, do you not think if someone has got the courage to go to the doctor about their mental health, they probably have been sort of counting their units for quite a long time and not doing it very successfully. But yeah, thank goodness they had that. And you're right. I think one of the things that women struggle the most with, when I'm working, because I work with women one-to-one as a coach, is around transition times. It's around that. How do I get from, busy, go, to bed, because my transition is, I sit down and have a glass of wine. Yeah. And, there's a neurotransmitter in the brain called GABA, which is kind of our own way of kind of our anti-anxiety. Basically, it calms you down and lowers the adrenals, and alcohol mimics GABA. So that's why you get that feeling of like, but the brain is such an incredible kind of machine that because something's mimicking it, they don't want there to be a surplus amount, so it drops the amount of GABA that it produces. And so that's why the next day, quite often people feel, they have anxiety, or they feel more anxious, or their heart's racing, because actually their neurochemicals are more out of balance than they were before. So, working really around those kind of stress techniques about how you can, calm down, take that transition time and really plan that in, and advocate for your needs. Is like, I need to go and have a bath, or like, I need to go to yoga, and over time your brain creates new neuro pathways. It, forgets one habit and creates a new habit. But yeah, those transition times are absolutely key for women.
Yeah.
A lot of women drink wine, and wine is particularly, good at mimicking GABA in the brain. And a lot of women are GABA deficient because they're stressed. So, nutrition around what you're eating, taking supplements that, like I think it's B7, a complex B vitamin, probiotics, all of those things can help your nervous system kind of heal and rebalance, because, it's totally out of whack and alcohol's making it worse. So.
Oh my God, this is bloody gold, Mandy. Thank you so much for all of this. Honestly, if I could have listened to this conversation 2 years ago, I bet you my recovery would have been quicker. I really am thinking about that. It's so true. I'm just processing in real time here. So you have to forgive me, because I'm just thinking, like, so many women, we don't put ourselves first.
Yeah.
And if only we did. Because as you said, like, you would spend 2 hours in an evening drinking some wine, but when your therapist said, can you take 2 hours a week for yourself? It kind of ignited that anger in you. Yeah. It's that defense, isn't it? Because, now that I'm really slowing down, I now see, actually, if I put a little bit too much on my plate that day, just either taking some things off the plate, or, that night, doing a meditation, having a bath, going for a walk, all these very simple things that are nourishing for us, they have just the same effect, if not better, than a glass of wine. But we're out of that habit loop, aren't we?
Yeah. And it's when you're in that kind of, when you're burnt out or you're in that survival state, like, you're going to reach for the things that your brains remember that worked, because of course it worked at some point, otherwise you wouldn't do it, so when you first built that habit, like, it had a good impact, but there's been a shift, and it doesn't, and because it's depleting your system, at one point you were on equilibrium with it, but now you're completely out of whack. And so, but when you're stressed out and when you're overwhelmed and all the things, it's like your brain will just ding for the easiest option. And so that's why it's that taking that time and slowing down is so important, because it's allowing your brain to go, okay, I've got other options. Like, okay, I've got other options. Not going into that craving brain state of just like, give it to me now. Like, okay, that's what I'll do. It's like, what's the long-term picture here? Playing it forward, how do I want to wake up in the morning? I've done this before. I know it never changes. I am allowed to go and have a bath. Like, I am allowed to go for a swim. I am allowed to say to my family, I will be with you in a moment, but I just need 5 minutes for myself. And that's so hard. Like, my thing is I have baths all the time, and in different times of the day, which is just so radical. At the weekend, I might have a bath about 11 o'clock in the morning. And I would never have done that, ever.
Yeah.
Ever. But now I know that, like, actually I need to rest regularly. I need to pace myself throughout the day. And quite often, that's a really good moment for me. The kids are watching telly. My husband's doing whatever he does, looking after his needs, spare.
Unapologetically.
Exactly. Probably playing tennis or going to golf, or just sleeping, while I run around worrying. But yeah, it's a good moment for me. So it's like, why not? Okay. And that will set me up for the rest of the day. Because that's the thing. It's like things go up and up and up and up, don't they? It's like,
yes.
And, we wrote, I don't know if it's in that book or it's in the new book, but we have sensory needs, not only sound, smell, taste, but also, within our body, like needing the toilet, for example. And how many women really need to go to the loo, but are doing other things.
Yes.
So stressful for your nervous system not to just answer your basic needs. But definitely 100%, many times I've been like cooking for the kids or like having a conversation with my mum on the phone or dealing with something, and I really need the toilet.
Yes.
And those little triggers, you know, imagine how many times we do those little things all day, or someone says something unkind, or, you know, we get bustled on the bus, or someone cuts in front of us. All of these little knocks, you know, they build up. And if we're not regulating throughout the day, then as much as we might be trying not to drink, you know, using willpower, it's a muscle, you know. And if you're like, you've already used your willpower not to swear at that person that, you know, got in front of you on the bus, or tell you're not shouting at your kids, or all the things, you know, like it's going to build and build and build. And then you've got no resilience at the end of the day. And so you're going to be, I won't do that today. I'll sort out my drinking tomorrow, kind of thing. So those mini breaks and those just taking breaks, taking time, you definitely are worth it. Like, you definitely are. And you definitely should, you know?
And I love the messaging in your, I mean, just the title, Love Yourself Sober, Self-Care Guide to Alcohol-Free Living for Busy Mothers. I love how you are just really encouraging women to embrace that self-compassion, that self-worth. It's because once we do that, then we can make better choices for ourselves. I mean, it's the old age, isn't it? Like, no one makes good choices after a bottle of wine. It's impossible, isn't it? How can you make good choices? But the irony is, nothing tastes better than feeling good the next day. That's something I've really discovered. You know, nothing. Yeah, that first glass of red after a stressful day is just heavenly, but it's completely out-trumped by waking up the next day. And like, you look better. Like, I mean, you know, your skin's better, you feel better. Like, my joints don't hurt so much going up the bloody stairs. Like, it's such a, but what I love about your book with Kate is, I'm thinking of some friends, and I'm thinking of where I was a couple of years ago. And you're so right. We often go into that, well, I'm not an alcoholic, or you kind of, you know, you push that away, those labels. But if we can just kind of opt to be gentle with ourselves, to slow down, to love ourselves as much as our kids, to do as much for ourselves as we do for our employers. You know, if you think about, well, you quit your job, your employer doesn't think about you ever again, despite how much you gave to them. It's just the way it is. It's okay. It's just the way it is. But bloody hell, I wish I'd taken so much better, you know, so much more care of myself now. And I just love, for anyone who's kind of listening to this, and because I have women who reach out to me and say, oh, I binge listened to a load of your episodes and it's really made me think. And that's the best, because I know when I was knee deep, I just wanted to hear the stories of others. Just that, you know, because you can feel so alone, can't you, in burnout? And you can also feel incredibly alone when you're having a drink on your own, trying to numb the problems that, you know, if you could just kind of get some help for, get some support. You know, there's absolutely no shame in getting someone to hold a mirror up and help you, because we can only do so much. We're already doing an incredible amount. Most women are doing beyond. So we can just look after ourselves.
And I think that was, you know, a real turning point for me was when I shifted it away from alcohol, because alcohol becomes the center stage of like, is it or isn't it? Is it a problem? Thing. And when I shifted it away, and it was when I owned my mental health story, and I owned the fact that I get depression, I get anxious, that I have had burnout, that, you know, my brain is quite fragile. my brain I need to look after my brain. It was like, well, I'm not going to put alcohol in it because it's going to harm it even more. And that was such a huge part for me. It was just like, okay, like nothing else matters. It's like, I struggle enough to look after my brain, my poor old brain, and it was that sort of self-compassion, that first step of self-love was just like, okay, enough, Mandy, And of course, there's all the reasons why we do these things, but it was just like, I think I need to look after my brain. Like, what can I do to try and look after my brain and be there for my kids and be there for myself? And it was like, okay, well, I can take that out. And it's just a drink, right? And that's the thing. Like, we're always like, oh my God, it's got alcohol. It's just like, we don't have that thought process around a glass of milk or a glass of water or a cup of tea. It's just a drink. It's just a drink.
It really is. In fact, I wrote down something and it really, I don't know, it just sent goosebumps when I read it in your book. And you say, newsflash, nothing needs to change apart from what you drink. So much drinking is an ingrained habit or down to social anxiety and putting ourselves in places we don't want to be. If you are doing something you love with people you love to do it with, you don't need alcohol. And I read that and I thought, well, I think that covers family dinners. It covers the office Christmas party that everyone's like, oh, I'll just drink, it'll be fine. It covers the job you don't feel you want to be in, that they don't deserve you. That covers so many facets of life. When I read that, I was like, oh, that's it. That's the golden nugget. I keep gushing about your book, but I just want anyone listening to this, get it. Bloody go and get it. Because it's when you're starting on this journey of kind of putting yourself first, it's the coaching exercises in here are beautiful. They're really good. And it's just that perfect, those baby steps towards looking at what you want in your life, as opposed to almost, are you buffering or protecting yourself from the outside world? It's going to that positive place. It's just fantastic, Mandy.
Thank you. Yeah, and I mean, people have sort of said, like, obviously, we wrote it around alcohol because that was our thing, right? And that was our own experience. But, a friend of mine who has never really had a sort of problematic relationship with alcohol, but definitely does with sugar, she read it because she's my friend and she was like, actually, I just admitted the word alcohol and put sugar and I could use it to help me. And I think that's the thing. I mean, now we created a course and we teach coaches around addictive behaviours because essentially it's all the same. It's just what's that thing that shows up for you negatively, and finding ways, using coaching tools, using, poignant questions to look at that and look at how you can, find something else, something that's going to be fulfilling and give you all the things that you think you're getting from this thing when actually it's just taking things away from you. Thank you. I mean, thanks for reading it. Thanks for...
honestly, it's an absolute gift to the world. It really is. I just love it. It's quite, this is a copy. If my friends are listening, they're like, can I borrow it? No, because it's like, it's got like writing in the margins. It's like, no, get your own. But get it. It's just fantastic. It really is. Thank you so much for writing it. And your friend is right that, because you say like problematic drinking is a spectrum.
Yeah, look for what represents you and what makes sense to you, and that and that's what's so great about kind of the internet, Instagram. There's so many forums, there's so many different you can like be, I mean, we had someone on the podcast last week and they're a kind of recovery sort of community based in the US, but they've got things all across the world, and their whole thing is around active recovery and exercise. So it's all about doing CrossFit and yoga and going out and doing activities. So it's like you know, that might be your thing. That might be like, yeah, that's my way in.
Yeah.
You know, it might be that you're a super spiritual person, you know, and doing the 12 steps and, you know, the relationship with higher power, that's your thing. You know, be a stressed out mom who doesn't relate to anything much other than being completely burnt out and having no self-care and not knowing like up from down, and, you know, love sober might be your thing, you know. So it's just, yeah, it's that's the brilliance of where we're at. It's just like, let's get away from one model and look at all models, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think at the end of the day, so many of, gosh, well, I'm saying this and I'm talking from my own experience and I'm thinking of other friends. So I can't, it's a sweeping generalization, but a lot of it comes back to, do you have great self-worth? Are you putting yourself, are you looking after yourself? Is there any self-love there? Because often there isn't, it's depleted, and it's coming back to that point of, okay, let's fill your cup up. I mean, they say it, don't they? But it's coming back to, you know, really looking after yourself. So then the ripple effects is that you can do a really good job of, you know, putting that out in the world as well.
Yeah. But it's interesting. One of my best friends said like exactly that. And she is in the 12-step fellowship. What did she say to me earlier? We were talking about, I said that I cried in therapy yesterday because of guilt, you know, basically feel guilty about everything all the time. And she was like, yeah, it's unrelenting, isn't it? And I was like, I just need to learn and develop that it's not this binary thinking that just because I have something nice doesn't necessarily mean that someone else has less, you know, because that's the guilt. It's just like, oh, if I'm having a nice life and I'm happy, that means that that's going to impact on someone else and they're going to have less and they're going to have pain. So I feel guilty. And then she said, yes, you and I are both givers, but we deserve to have full cups to give from. Otherwise, I'm giving from a depleted, dry well. And I was like, yeah, that's true.
Oh, it's so true. And let's face it, how many women are out there and they don't even have a bloody cup?
Yeah.
Gone. Exactly. Bloody cup to give from. Like they're just, absolutely. Yeah. Oh, yeah. What would you say, Mandy, to someone listening to this and struggling with burnout and thinking, okay, am I using alcohol to kind of self-medicate, that whole kind of numbing angle? What would you say to them?
Well, you're not alone, you know, firstly. You know, you really, really aren't, and there's no shame. Like, I love that expression. I'm going to get it wrong now, but, you know, let's forgive ourselves for what we did before we knew any better.
Oh, yes.
You know, because it's just like, well, if you don't know, then how can you do anything, you know, how can you do anything else?
And at the time,
better is quite a strong word, but, you know, forgive ourselves from what we did when we're in survival mode, you know, it's just like, but yeah, like, I mean, if you feel confident enough, talk to your GP. There's an anonymous Ask the Doctor service on Soberistas, which is an anonymous forum online. There's, you know, talk to us at Love Sober. You know, just talk anyone that you like the look of on Instagram who's talking about this, you know, drop them a DM and just say, like, I don't think alcohol's serving me and I don't know what to do. You know, get support, get community. It's the most important sort of part and has been for me. You know, and then break it down into manageable steps. You know, what's manageable for you today? Like, is it manageable for you to not drink at all? If you can do one day, then fantastic. If that feels like too much, you know, can you reduce and then reduce again? You know, would it help to have a coach or see a therapist? You know, like, read a book, listen to a podcast, just fill your world with the way that you want to show up in the world, and cut out the noise of the rest. Because that's what, I deleted my Facebook. I deleted all the mummy wine bloggers, all of those things, because it was too noisy. It was, I just filled my feed with sober people. Just surround yourself, listen to podcasts. Annie Grace, This Naked Mind is an amazing podcast. There's so many now, like there's so much sort of support you can get for free. You can do Annie Grace, they have a free 30-day, the sober experiment. That's great. Like there's just sort of, get curious about what life could be like if you just took out that one thing and added in whatever else you wanted to.
I know. I'm just listening. Like it's that choice, isn't it? Even you saying like I, deleted all these bloggers and like if following certain people doesn't work for you anymore, it's okay. You have the authority here to just, as you say, fill your world with what makes you happy, what brings you that joy and that.
I suppose it's the same for you, like living abroad, like the loneliness just was intense, because all the time I was looking at Instagram of like people meeting up, having parties, like going for play dates, seeing my family together. It was just awful. So just deleted it all. It's like ignorance is bliss in certain ways. It really is. It's just like shut down the noise so you can focus on what matters to you.
Yes.
And I love that expression as well, as a people pleaser. Those that matter don't mind, and those that mind don't matter. And I just live by that. It's just like,
it's so true.
It's people that love you, they just don't care. People that make a big deal out of it, they don't really care about you. It's like people that have a problem with your boundaries is because they were gaining from you not having any.
Oh, that's good, isn't it? Oh my God. Oh, it's so true. It's so true. It's just coming back to you. Mm-mm. Oh, this is incredible work you're doing, Mandy. It really is. And this chat has just been phenomenal. I oh my gosh. It's going to help so many people listening. And I really wish I'd had something like this. I'd found something like this a couple of years ago. It's been incredible.
But you're here now, right? It's the beautiful part. You're fucking here now.
Oh, you know what? You're right. Thank you for that reminder, because look, the burnout recovery, I'm still bloody whipping myself with a stick whenever. Yeah. You're right, I'm here now, and that's amazing.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh, this has been incredible, Mandy. Thank you so much. I've been asking my guests at the end some quick fire, light-hearted questions to answer on, because everyone answers differently. So if you're up for it.
Go on.
Okay, so on your dodgy, tough days, do you opt for moving your body or moving the remote? What works for you?
Remote.
Yeah. Watch something lovely on telly. Yeah. Something British.
Yeah. Queer Eye or any sort of any kind of makeover show. That's my go-to. Like home makeovers, people makeovers. As there's a bit of a story as well. Emotional kind of yes,
I'm with you. Queer Eye or dog rescue videos. Yes. They work for me every bloody time. Yeah. Oh, now would you go for a bag of almonds or bag of Maltesers?
Oh, bag of almonds. Sorry.
No, it's good. It's good. Okay. Well done. Now, ask for help or happy to hermit?
Oh. Can I sit on the fence? Bit of both. I'm getting better at asking for help. So my intention is to ask for help more.
That's good.
But I do love being on my own. Like when everyone goes out, I'm like, bye, yay.
It's space.
Yeah. It's a very different thing to like being alone and being lonely are very different states. But
because your job, you must give a lot of energy to your clients. So you need that time to kind of, rest.
Yeah. One of the best things I think that I found in my recovery was noise cancelling headphones. So you're like, where's she going with this? But it's been an absolute life changer. Like, I can sit in the room and I can have a cuddle with my son and he can watch cartoons, but I can just turn off the noise and I can actually rest, or like I can be there and I can read my book, or I can colour. And I don't put any music on, I just turn them on and it cuts out the noise. So they're my kind of favourite thing, just to come back to myself after like a day with clients and things like that.
It's important. And as you say, it's keeping that noise out, because I used to do the same when I was working with kids and coming home I'd put earplugs in. Mm-hmm. I could still hear them, but it was just that it wasn't that kind of high-pitched, like busy, like anxiety inducing. Yeah. It was just like calm. So I completely get that. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Now, what's the one self-compassionate thing you're going to do today that your future self's going to thank you for?
Well, whether I'll do it or not, but what I should do is I turn off my phone.
Okay. Yeah.
Turn off my phone like 9 o'clock, because good sleep and reading my book. My little thing is my phone. It's my problematic behavior. But it's better than it was. We've moved on. But that's the thing that I can self-sabotage my sleep sometimes, which is like fundamental, really. So
it is. It's hard though when you're self-employed, when you're a freelancer, to switch your phone off, because there's an element of that survival. You just always want to be back. So I get it. It's not an easy thing to do.
No, like I mean, I can't have my phone near me at night. Like, I have to put it, like I do, throwing it across the bed.
Yeah,
enough. So I manage it, but certainly, my future self would be like, give me a high five if I was like, on my phone less.
Yeah, you're doing it. You're doing it. Oh, Mandy, listen, a huge, big, whopping thank you for this incredible chat and this incredible book. I'll put in the show notes where, links for people getting it, whether you're in England, whether you're on this side of the pond in Canada, grab it. It's just phenomenal. It really is. Thank you.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Everyday Burnout Conversations. Please check the show notes for any links to items discussed today, and the original music and sound editing is by Chris Taylor. If you've enjoyed this podcast and have a spare few minutes, then it would be absolutely amazing if you could leave me a happy starry rating and review. It really does help this podcast reach a little further, and I'd just love it to land in the lap of those who, like me, last year are perhaps feeling isolated and lonely in their burnout struggle. Please note, this podcast is not intended as medical advice. Remember, you matter, so don't hesitate to reach out to your doctor or mental health professional for support if you're having a rough time. Wishing you a great week and take good care of yourself. Bye for now.